La Grande Demoiselle by Grace Elizabeth King. Read for you by Rick Chavez. Grace Elizabeth King was born in 1851 in New Orleans to an aristocratic family, most known for writing stories about Louisiana life and times. She was also a member of the Louisiana Historical Society. One of her works includes New Orleans, the Place and the People in 1895, a historical text about a city spanning 3 centuries. La Grande Demoiselle. That was what she was called by everybody as soon as she was seen or described. Her name, besides baptismal titles, was Idélie Saint-Foy Montemont des. When she came into society in the brilliant little world of New Orleans, it was the event of the season, and after she came in, whatever she did became also events. Whether she went or did not go, what she said or did not say, what she wore and did not wear, all this became important matters of discussion, quoted as much or more than what the president said or the governor thought. And in those days, the days of '59, New Orleans was not, as it is now, a one-heiress place, but it may be said that one could find heiresses then as one finds typewriting girls now. Mademoiselle Idélie received her birth, and what education she had on her parents' plantation, the famed old Grande Saint-Foy place, and it is no secret like the ancient kings of France. Her birth exceeded her education. It was a plantation, the Grande Saint-Foy, the richness and luxury of which are really well described in those fervid pictures of tropical life. At one time, the passion of philanthropic imaginations excited and exciting over the horrors of slavery. Although these pictures were then often accused of being purposely exaggerated, they seem now to fall short of, instead of surpassing, the truth. Stately walls, acres of roses, miles of oranges, unmeasured fields of cane, colossal sugar house. They were all there, and all the rest of it, with the slaves everywhere. Whole villages of Negro cabins, and there were also most noticeable to the natural, as well as to the visionary eye. There were the ease, idleness, extravagance, self-indulgence, pomp, pride, arrogance, in short, the whole enumeration, the moral sine qua non, as some people considered it, of the wealthy slaveholder of aristocratic descent and tastes. What Mademoiselle Idélie cared to learn, she studied. What she did not, she ignored, and she followed the same simple rule untrammeled in her eating, drinking, dressing, and comportment generally, and whatever discipline may have been exercised on the place, either in fact or fiction, most assuredly none of it, even so much as in a threat, ever attended her sacred person. When she was just turned 16, Mademoiselle Idélie made up her mind to go into society. Whether she was beautiful or not, it is hard to say. It is almost impossible to appreciate properly the beauty of the rich, the very rich. The unfettered development, the limitless choice of accessories, the confidence, the self-esteem, the sureness of expression, the simplicity of purpose, the ease of execution. All this produce a certain effect of beauty behind which one really cannot get to measure length of nose or brilliancy of eye. This much can be said. There was nothing in her that positively contradicted any assumption of beauty on her part, or credit of it on the part of others. She was very tall and very thin, with small head, long neck, black eyes, and abundant straight black hair, for which her hairdresser deserved more praise than she. Good teeth, Of course, a mouth that, even in prayer, talked nothing but commands. That is about all she had en foi d'ornement, as the modesty say. It may be added that she walked as if the Rensanfois plantation extended over the whole earth, and the soil of it were too vile for her tread. Of course, she did not buy her toilets in New Orleans. Everything was ordered from Paris, and came as regularly through the custom house as the modes and robes to the milliners. She was furnished by a certain house there, just as one of a royal family would be at the present day. As this had lasted from her layout to her 16th year, it may be imagined what took place when she determined to make her debut. Then it was literally, not metaphorically, carte blanche. At least so it got to the ears of society. She took a sheet of notepaper, wrote the date at the top, added, "I make my debut in November," signed her name at the extreme end of the sheet, addressed it to her dressmaker in Paris, and sent it. It was said that in her dresses, the very handsomest silks were used for linings, and the real lace was used where others but imitation. Around the bottoms of the skirts, for instance, and silk ribbons of the best quality served the purposes of ordinary tapes, and sometimes the buttons were of real gold and silver, sometimes set with precious stones. Not that she ordered these particulars, but the dressmakers, when given carte blanche by those who did not condescend to details, so soon exhaust the outside limits of garments that perforce they take to plastering them inside with gold, so to speak, and when the bill goes in, they depend upon the furnishings to carry out a certain amount of the contract in justifying the price. And it was said that these costly dresses, after being worn once or twice, were cast aside, thrown upon the floor, given to the negroes. Anything to get them out of sight. Not an inch of the real lace, not one of the jeweled buttons, not a scrap of ribbon was ripped off to save. It was said that if she wanted to romp with her dogs in all her finery, she did it. She was known to have ridden horseback one moonlight night, all around the plantation in a white silk dinner dress flounced with alençon. And at night, when she came from the balls, tired to death, as only balls can render one, she would throw herself down upon her bed in her tulle skirts. On top or not of the exquisite flowers, she did not care, and make her maid undress her in that position, often having her bodices cut of her, because she was too light to turn over and have them unlaced. That she was admired, raved about, loved even, goes without saying. After the first month, she held the refusal of half the beaux of New Orleans. Men did absurd, undignified, preposterous things for her, and she, love, marry, the idea never occurred to her. She treated the most exquisite of her pretenders no better than she treated her Paris gowns, for the matter of that. She could not even bring herself to listen to a proposal patiently, whistling to her dogs in the middle of the most ardent protestations, or jumping up and walking away with a shrug of shoulders and a bah. Well, everyone knows what happened after 59. There is no need to repeat. The history of one is the history of all, but there was this difference, for there is every shade of difference in misfortune, as there is every shade of resemblance in happiness. Mortemont des went off to fight. That was natural. His family had been doing that, he thought or said, ever since Charlemagne. Just as naturally he was killed in the first engagement. They, his family, were always among the first killed, so much so that it began to be considered assassination to fight a duel with any of them. All that was in the ordinary course of events. One difference in their misfortunes lay in that after the city was captured, their plantation, so near, convenient, and rich in all kinds of provisions, was selected to receive a contingent of troops, a colored company. If it had been a colored company raised in Louisiana, it might have been different, and these Negroes mixed with the Negroes in the neighborhood. If it had been a colored company raised in Louisiana, it might have been different, and these niggers mixed with the niggers in the neighborhood. And niggers are no better than whites, for the proportion of good and bad among them. And the officers were always off duty when they should have been on, and on when they should have been off. One night, the dwelling caught fire. There was an immediate rush to save the ladies. Oh, there was no hesitation about that. They were seized in their beds and carried out in the very arms of their enemies, carried away off to the sugar house and deposited there. No danger of their doing anything, but kept very quiet and still in their chemise de nuit and their one sheet apiece, which was about all that was safe from the conflagration. That is for them. But it must be remembered that this is all hearsay. When one has not been present, one knows nothing of one's own knowledge. One can only repeat. It has been repeated, however, that although the house was burned to the ground and everything in it destroyed, wherever for a year afterward a man of the company or of the neighborhood was found, there could have been found also, without search warrant, property that had belonged to the Demoiselle. That is the story, and it is believed or not, exactly according to prejudice. How the ladies ever got out of the sugar house, history does not relate, nor what they did. It was not a time for sociability, either personal or epistolary. At one offensive word your letter, and you very likely examined. And Ship Island for a hotel, with soldiers for hostesses. Madame Demoiselle died very soon after the accident, of rage they say, and that was about all the public knew. Indeed, at the time the society of New Orleans had other things to think about than the fate of the Demoiselle. As for la Grande Demoiselle, she had prepared for her own oblivion in the hearts of her female friends. And the gentlemen, her preux chevalier, they were burning with other passions than those which had driven them to her niece, encountering a little more serious response than Boss and Shrags. And after all, a woman seems the quickest thing forgotten when once the important affairs of life come to men for consideration. It might have been 10 years according to some calculations, or 10 eternities. The heart and the almanac never agree about time. But one morning old Champigny, they used to call him Champignon. But one morning old Champigny, they used to call him Champignon, was walking along his levee front, calculating how soon the water would come over and drown him out, as the Louisianians say. It was before a 7 o'clock breakfast, cold, wet, rainy, and discouraging. The road was knee-deep in mud, and so broken up with hauling that it was like walking upon waves to get over it. A shower poured down. Old Champigny was hurrying in when he saw a figure approaching. He had to stop to look at it, for it was worth a while. The head was hidden by a green barège veil, which the showers had plentifully besprinkled with dew. A tall, thin figure. Figure? No, not even could it be called a figure. straight up and down like a finger or a post, high-shouldered and a step like a plowman's. No umbrella, no, nothing more, in fact. It does not sound so peculiar as when first related. Something must be forgotten. The feet. Oh yes, the feet. They were like waffle irons or frying pans or anything of that shape. Old Champigny did not care for women. He never had. They simply did not exist for him in the order of nature. He had been married once, it is true, about a half century before, but that was not reckoned against the existence of his prejudice, because he was célibataire to his fingertips, as anyone could see a mile away. But that woman intrigued him. He had no servant to inquire from. He performed all of his own domestic work in the wretched little cabin that replaced his old home. For Champigny also belonged to the great majority nouveau pauvre. He went out into the rice field where were one or two hands that worked on shares with him, and he asked them. They knew immediately. There is nothing connected with the parish that the field hand does not know at once. She was the teacher of the colored public school, some 3 or 4 miles away. Ah, thought Champigny, some northern lady on a mission. He watched to see her return in the evening, which she did, of course, in the blinding rain. Imagine the green barège veil then, for it remained always down over her face. Old Champigny could not get over it that he had never seen her before. But he must have been seen her, and with his obstruction in old age, not have noticed her. For he found out from the negroes that she had been teaching 4 or 5 years there. And he found out also, how is not important, that she was Idélie sans foi fortement désirée. La Grande Demoiselle. He had never known her in the old days, owing to his uncomplimentary attitude toward women, but he knew of her, of course, and of her family. It should have been said that his plantation was about 50 miles higher up the river, and on the opposite bank to Saint-Foy. It seemed terrible. The old gentleman had had reverses of his own, which would bear the telling, but nothing was more shocking to him than this, that Idélie sans-foi fortement désirée should be teaching a public colored school for, it makes one blush to name it, $7.50 a month. For $7.50 a month to teach a set of, well, he found out where she lived. A little cabin, not so much worse than his own, for that matter. In the corner of a field, no companion, no servant, nothing but food and shelter. Her clothes have been described. Only the good God himself knows what passed in Champigny's mind on the subject. We know only the results. He went and married La Grande Demoiselle. How? Only the good God knows that too. Every first of the month, when he goes to the city to buy provisions, he takes her with him. In fact, he takes her everywhere with him. Passengers on the railroad know them well, and they always have a chance to see her face. When she passes her old plantation, La Grande Demoiselle always lifts her veil for one instant. The inevitable green barège veil. What a face! Thin, long, sallow, petrified. And the neck, if she would only tie something around the neck, in her plain coarse cottonette gown. The Negro women about her were better dressed than she. Poor old Champignon. It was not an act of charity to himself, no doubt cross and disagreeable, besides being ugly. And as for love, gratitude. The end. La Grande Demoiselle by Grace Elizabeth King.